Hi guys, welcome to the Epic Aesthetic. This is high intensity training and this is my vlog number 8, legs on the A split. So if you want to have a look at my routine and see how it changes and evolves over the A and B split of the routines, there is a link below to a spreadsheet, and in this spreadsheet you'll see the exact log I use and keep all the details of my workout in. It's a good little tool that you might want to borrow and adapt to your own training routine. Or you can follow my routine if you like. But always keep in mind that I'm probably more of an intermediate to advanced HIIT trainer. And my routine has been customized to deal with my weak points. So it might not suit everybody, and it probably wouldn't be the most ideal routine, I think, for a beginner. But for those intermediate and advanced guys, it might serve them very well in their training endeavors. So for me, carbs have always been a weak point for me. Early on, I could have blamed that on just the bad habits of being at uni and putting legs on a Friday and always skipping them. But every other body part that was neglected during those days has come along recently. So my quads are well developed now, hammies, glutes, they've all come up to be in relatively good balance with my upper body. But what hasn't come up in a manner I've been happy with is my calves. Could be genetic limitations, or it could just be, you know, a legacy of not applying enough focus to them. So what I've done to kind of deal with the issue is I put carbs first in the routine. In that way, I come into the gym, I'm fresh, I'm ready to go. I'm probably high as a kite on too many pre-workout scoops because often I have to train late at night in order to do the filming, so it keeps me awake. Not that I encourage living on gym sups and stimulants to get through workouts, but sometimes we have to do what we have to do. I'm otherwise natty. But yes, I do like to hit the pre-workout in those moments, say when I'm training after a 12-hour shift at work or I'm having to film late at night. Otherwise, I don't really like to use stimulants when training in the gym. If you're feeling tired, it's probably a good sign that you shouldn't be training. You should give yourself another rest day so that you can hit the gym fresh. So addressing my calf issue here, 4-2-4 cadence and a superset between seated calf and standing calf. And I got this idea out of a Markus Reinhardt training DVD which I purchased recently, which I highly recommend. Obviously HIIT training is a bit of a niche and not a whole lot of good content's being made for it, but fortunately guys like Markus Reinhardt, who are kind of the modern face and the modern gurus of HIIT, are still out there making great content for our small little band of HIIT enthusiasts. So there's a link to Markus's Facebook page in the comments section. So if you have any interest in what I think is a really good DVD, go and check that out. And I'm pleased to announce that later this year I'll be going to the Mr. Olympia to view, and I've got my silver VIP ticket, so I'm very excited. But what I'm more excited about is I've lined up a HIIT training camp with Markus Reinhardt. So I'll get to train with a guy who I consider, you know, one of the better examples, probably one of the best examples of HIIT trainers today, both in terms of his training methodology and the physique he's built with his methodology. So although I don't think a great physique is always indicative of great or ideal training, I think it always helps to show a certain authenticity to the ideas behind the body. So it's always frustrating when you see people talking about, you know, ideal training, and it's very obvious that they don't train intensely or consistently. Genetics, they're not an excuse. Anyone can build a great body if they apply good sound thinking combined with will and regular effort. So I think Markus really embodies that idea, and I can't wait to train with him later in the year. So I've stolen this little combo from his training DVD quite shamelessly, because I also want to have big calves just like him. So seated, standing calf, back to back, 4-2-4 cadence, slow and controlled, holding for 2 seconds at the top of every rep, really squeezing those muscle fibers so that they reach failure. and are given a reason to grow and develop. So week to week, I have been steadily improving in terms of reps and weight used with this program. So hopefully that'll continue, and in a year's time you'll see that my calves in my vlogs have steadily improved over time and caught up with the rest of my leg development. So as you see there, I had a set to failure, and I came out and I took 6 breaths, and this is what's called a rest pause technique. So basically what it does is often the pain or just the physical kind of exhaustion of the set can cause you to stop before your muscles have truly failed. And by having a quick little breather to just push some lactic acid out of the muscle, you can overcome that sort of pain barrier and get in and absolutely toast off those fibers. But it is a technique I recommend you use sparingly, because it is very hard to recover from, especially when you're training to true failure. So that's calf training done, just those 2 sets back to back. So it doesn't seem like a lot, but as long as you progress week to week and you train absolutely to failure with adequate recovery time and nutrition, the muscle should respond accordingly. So beginning my quad training or my leg training for the upper part of the legs, I'm doing a pre-exhaust combo between leg extension and leg press. I do this every week, both on the A and B split, because I find it just the most effective way to train. There was a time when I used to perform squats after this combination, but what I found was that I could never improve in the squat after going to failure and improving on the pre-exhaust combo of leg extension and leg press. And what that was telling me was that that second exercise of the squats was actually redundant. I'd already made all those fibers in the legs go to absolute failure, and therefore was unable to improve on the second exercise that also hit the muscle in much the same fashion. So to me, that was like performing additional sets of leg press. It was adding more volume without any reason. It didn't have a different recruitment pattern in terms of fibers, and therefore didn't need to be in my program anymore. So what I did was I dropped squats from the routine, and what I've found is that my legs have been getting stronger every session whilst doing this leg extension leg press combination. And not only stronger by say 1 or 2 reps, but I've actually been improving by 4 or 5 reps each session. And this has happened for sort of 3 or 4 weeks in a row now. And that's really interesting to me, because as you sort of get to the more advanced level of your training, progress comes rather slow no matter what routine you're on. But I've been doing things like I recently switched from training 3 days a week to training 1 day on, 2 days off. And I've often been inserting a 3rd rest day before my leg training. And that wider frequency has enabled me more recovery time. And a lot of people, they're afraid that if they train too wide or too many days between body parts, is that all of a sudden they're just going to lose all this strength and their muscle's going to waste away. But the time it takes for a muscle to recover after training truly to failure is probably a lot longer than people think. And I think what I've shown is that by hitting legs perhaps once every 8 or 9 days, instead of say once every 7, I've actually enabled them to start progressing at a very fast rate now, and I'm very happy with that. And it's really good and interesting. I feel that my actions are starting to match, I guess, the theories laid out by Mike Mentzer and Arthur Jones in terms of recovery times. So if you find you're lagging with the body part, go wide on the frequency. Try and give yourself that extra rest, and you might be surprised by how well your body responds even sort of late in your training career. Obviously 10 years is not an incredibly long training career with most bodybuilders, you know, training for 15-20 years before they ever hit their peak. But I would still call it, you know, well beyond beginner gains for me. So adding those extra rest days, training once every 8 or 9 days for a body part, and maybe even wider later on, is something you might want to try. But I definitely know for me on my legs, dropping those squats at the end and increasing the rest day has absolutely made my legs respond really fastly. So I'm expecting 3, 4, 5 rep improvements week to week at the moment, whilst increasing weight at the same time. So I think this weight is 10 kilos heavier than last week, and I still managed to hit the top of my rep range, get above 15 reps. So that's really interesting to me that you can do that even late in your career. So wider frequency, give it a try. The muscle takes a lot longer to recover and adapt by getting bigger and stronger than a lot of people believe. And that's one of the really exciting things about HIT training, is that I guess the philosophy has really interesting implications that might seem counterintuitive compared to what we think or what most of the bro science out there says. So longer rest periods, very effective to keep progress. So if I can improve on all my muscles by 4 or 5 reps week to week, well, if you add that up over a year, that's extraordinary progress. That'll show incredible results in terms of size. So that's something I've been really excited about in my training recently. So as you can see here, I've been showing full-length videos. So I've been showing the sets in their entirety, not cutting them short. What that means is I often have to ramble on a little bit longer with the voiceovers. Sorry if that gets annoying, but you get to see exactly how hard I train and the duration of the sets. So you can see I'm pretty much in agony here. In my head, I really do want to quit. I'm in incredible pain in the quads. As you can see, I've already done that leg extension to failure, and now I'm slamming the lower body with some leg press and just grinding out slowly. And it's agony. It honestly is agony. And I can see why a lot of people prefer to just sort of fling the weight and stop short of failure, because there's no fun in it. This isn't enjoyable, but it is necessary. It is the kind of pain, it is the kind of intensity that you need to exhibit week to week, year in, year out, if you want to build above normal levels of muscle growth. You can look beach ready by just training easy with any method in the gym, but if you really want to keep growing as a natural athlete, then going to these absolute limits of your ability are absolutely what is required to develop an impressive physique. So it's developing that mental toughness, I think, is really important to training in general, but especially to high intensity training. If you can't train intensely, no routine's going to give you your best body. That's just a fact. You're just going to have to learn to get used to that idea and to push through the pain and not let yourself stop a set prematurely because you don't have the ticker to see it through. So this exercise here is the hyperextension, and this is kind of what I'd call a crossover exercise. Now it hits both the hamstrings and the lower back probably in equal proportion, and I tend to treat it more as a lower back exercise. Now I used to train lower back with my back routine, but what I found was it hit my hamstrings really, really hard, and so when it would come to hamstring training, sort of 2 or 3 days after back, it would interfere, I guess. So what I did was I switched my lower back training onto my leg day, and that's been incredibly useful. It makes a lot more sense. It seems to tie in a lot more sensibly to train lower back with the leg day, considering how a lot of hamstring exercises also hit the lower back very hard. So things like stiff leg deadlifts, for example, hit the lower back and the hamstrings incredibly hard. So often, you got to think very intelligently about where you place certain exercises in your routine. So for me, swapping my lower back training to a leg day, I thought was a very, very creative move, and it's definitely played dividends. So this exercise takes my lower back to full failure and helps build up that lumbar region. And it also nicely warms up my hamstrings. It doesn't take my hamstrings to failure in any sense, but it warms them up definitely for the hamstring exercises that are to follow. So I just do 1 set to failure here for lower back. I seem to improve every week on it, so I don't really see the need for intensity sets unless it starts to get stubborn and stop moving. So hamstrings are warmed up a little bit from that hyperextension, and now I move on to seated ham. So I love the seated ham exercises. I don't really like laying down on a lying leg curl or anything like that. I've found the seated exercises have a really awesome range of motion, and I prefer to be upright when I train. I think it's just better for breathing and muscle control. So this exercise, what's really important is when you get in that fully contracted position and you've drawn your heels as close to your body as you can, really squeeze for 2 seconds. So like all of the exercises that have a sort of peak contracted position that's under load, the 2 second static is the most effective way you can take advantage of that sort of load curve. If there's an exercise where there's no load at the top or contracted position, well, that's telling you that that part of the rep range is ineffective and should either be avoided, or you should find a superior exercise. So this is kind of like when you do, say, a machine curl. When you're at the top of the rep, when your muscle's at the shortest position, it still has a really heavy load on the muscle. And if you can find exercises that work the peak contracted position, really take advantage of them by using this technique of a static hold. And don't think of it as just holding statically either. I'm still really driving my heels back absolutely as hard as I can, because what I'm trying to do is signal my body that there is a heavy demand on the muscle and that I need to adapt by getting bigger and stronger. So you can see my leg gets a little bit of a wobble and a shake there, and that's because I'm just working so hard. And this, again, like I was stating on the other exercise, intensity, working the muscle hard beyond the point where you want to stop, is really important for keeping gains happening past your beginner stage. You know, when you first start weight training, almost anything works, you know, because you've gone from doing nothing, or from doing fitness type exercise, to heavy intense loads in a comparative fashion. But once you've been doing it for a few years, your progress will stall, and unless you really start to implement correct philosophy and correct theories of training by training more intensely and having more rest time, your progress will stall, and you won't be able to keep progressing unless you use chemical enhancement, which unfortunately is what a lot of young men or sort of men in their mid-20s resort to in order to keep gaining. Instead of trying to figure out the nature of their muscle and their bodies, they just resort to a quick fix, which is, I guess, part of that larger problem in society of instant gratification. But for me, I've chosen not to use steroids, and I'll probably keep that choice for the rest of my life. And I don't really want to hate on anyone that does use gear. It's about, you know, the health risks you're happy with in order to gain muscle. But for me, I really love the idea of just using, you know, the natural resources around me, just eating good food and trying to figure out really the nature of the body. That's a really interesting kind of quest for me in my life, to really see how far I can push the theories and push the limits of my training to get the best results. And I feel that by remaining natural, that I'm able to do that in a really sort of objective manner, so that I know the things that I change in my routine and in my nutrition are responsible, instead of just sort of sticking a needle in the arm and having me progress regardless of what I do in the gym. But again, that's a personal choice, and even if you are on gear, I feel that HIIT training will provide you the best path to gain. So Dorian Yates was a famous drug-using Mr. Olympian. Of course, they're all drug-using, but he was one of the biggest, gnarliest guys in the early and mid-90s. And he used to train one set to failure, and look how big he got. So, yeah, so definitely this week I want you to think about high intensity, you know, pushing past that point of comfort as being the only real way you can get stronger. And if you push to that point, you can't do volume, you can't do extra sets, because your muscles, they're gone, they're burnt out, they're not capable of any more once they've achieved true failure. So thanks guys for watching, and be sure to like, share and subscribe.